Your network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Monday, May 31st, 2021. It is Memorial Day. Hope everybody's doing well today. Well, it's a lot going on, and we know the commemoration, the 100th commemoration of the Tulsa Race Massacre is taking place now. I've been watching all the documentaries on it. I watched the 2-hour one on the History Channel. I watched it 3 times actually and recorded it. Also, I watched the one on CNN as well. It came on CNN Monday. So we're going to talk about that on Tuesday's show. All right. Originally, I was going to talk about it today, but I wanted to deal with the hidden African American origins of Memorial Day. And I was going to do it. I was going to try to do this broadcast early in the day and then deal with the Tulsa Race Massacre on today's show. But it didn't work out like that. So it's been a busy day. So we're going to talk about the hidden African American origin of Memorial Day, the hidden African American origin of Memorial Day. We'll deal with that today. And then on our Tuesday show, we'll deal with my thoughts on the Tulsa Race Massacre documentary on the History Channel. All right. So a lot of people have been seeing information about the hidden African American origins of Memorial Day going back to 1865, May 1st, 1865. So we're going to deal with some of that history. We're going to talk about also Decoration Day, May 30th, 1868. We'll deal with that as well. And we're going to deal with some Civil War history also. Okay. All right. So everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in as well. And I first found out about this information in about 2011. There was an article from thegrio.com that dealt with how African Americans actually celebrated the first Memorial Day. And oftentimes you have things like this that take place and we don't get any credit for them. And this is an example of that. But, you know, over the past few years, more information has come out and it's talked about more, but still, I don't think we get as much credit as we should. All right. So on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events in history, politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, love, sex, health issues, relationships, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Also visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show. And you can still register for the online course that I teach on Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school, what we do with thousands of years of history. It's a 9-week online course that I teach. So visit AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We'll post a link here also. Okay, so when we deal with the history of Memorial Day, right, it takes us back to the U.S. Civil War. Now, Memorial Day is an American holiday observed on the last Monday of May, honoring the men and women who died while serving in the U.S. military. Memorial Day 2021 fell on May 31st, May 31st, the last Monday in May. Now, Memorial Day also marks the unofficial start of summer and is celebrated by cookouts, 3-day weekends, etc. Many people don't know that Memorial Day has its origins with African Americans at the end of the U.S. Civil War. Now, in 1966, the federal government declared Waterloo, New York, as the official birthplace of Memorial Day. This is before African Americans were getting any type of credit for having the first Memorial Day or the first Decoration Day. And this information really didn't surface until about 2011, okay, dealing with the African American influence. Now, so Waterloo, New York, which first celebrated Memorial Day, May 5th, 1866. Okay, May 5th, 1866 was chosen because it hosted an annual community-wide event during which businesses closed and residents decorated the graves of soldiers with flowers and flags. But even before that took place, even before then, the first Memorial Day celebration or the first Decoration Day was held by African Americans. Okay. And this was May 1st, 1865 in Charleston, South Carolina. May 1st, 1865 in Charleston, South Carolina. And this is based upon two reports that historian David Blight found, one in the New York Tribune and the other in the Charleston Courier. And the reports are that a crowd of 10,000 people, mostly freed slaves, former slaves, African Americans, with some white missionaries, staged a parade around a racetrack. It was a horse track. 3,000 African American school children carried bouquets of flowers and sang the song John Brown's Body. Okay, dealing with John Brown at Harper's Ferry, the white man that had an insurrection, John Brown, who wanted to free the slaves. Now, members of the famed 54th Massachusetts Regiment and other Black Union regiments were in attendance and performed double-time marches. African American ministers recited verses from the Bible also. I'm going to give you some background information on that story as well. Now, there were a few articles that I've seen over the past few years dealing with this history. I saw a lot of people circulating the one from Time Magazine. The one from Time Magazine actually came out in 2020. I read it when it came out. It's May 22nd, 2020. And it's the Overlooked Black History of Memorial Day. The Overlooked Black History of Memorial Day. Actually, they have a photograph of the 50th Regiment. Was it in here? The 50th Regiment? Okay, no, it's the one from history.com. Actually has a picture of the 54th Regiment. I'll show you that one. There's also one from history.com, the official website of the History Channel. One of the earliest Memorial Days was held by freed African Americans. One of the earliest Memorial Days was held by freed African Americans. And we'll flip over to this one also here. Okay. One of the earliest Memorial Day ceremonies was held by freed African Americans. At the close of the Civil War, people recently freed from enslavement in Charleston, South Carolina, honored fallen Union soldiers. And they have a picture in here of the Battle of Fort Wagner. The Battle of Fort Wagner on Moor's Island was the Union attack that took place July 18th, 1863. It was led by the 54th Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry. The infantry was one of the first major American military units made up of Black soldiers. When you saw the movie Glory with Morgan Freeman and Matthew Broderick and Denzel Washington. Okay, that's about the 54th Regiment. Okay, 54th Regiment during the U.S. Civil War. So this is a famous painting here. Okay, let's continue. All right, now, and we're coming up here on a break in just a minute, so we'll have to go to break in just a minute. Okay, so Decoration Day is what, before it was called Memorial Day, it was called Decoration Day. And this goes back to May 5th, 1868. May 5th, 1868, 3 years after the Civil War ends. General John A. Logan, who was a leader of an organization of Northern Civil War veterans, called for a nationwide day of remembrance later in the month of May 1868. He proclaimed, quote, the 30th of May, 1868 is designated for the purpose of strewing with flowers or otherwise decorating the graves of comrades who died in defense of their country during the late rebellion and whose bodies now lie in almost every city, village, and hamlet churchyard in the land, end quote, he proclaimed. Okay. The date of Decoration Day, as he called it, was chosen because it was not the anniversary of any particular battle. Okay. So for a long time, the celebration that African Americans had at the horse race track, May 1st, 1865, for a long time, that was overlooked. Okay. And we weren't given any, as a lot of other things, we weren't given any credit for having the first Decoration Day, or what people would call the first Memorial Day. Okay. That just went unnoticed. All right. We're coming up here on the break. We're going to continue this on the other side of the break. Listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Monday, May 31st, 2021, Memorial Day. We're talking about the hidden African American origins, the hidden African American origin of Memorial Day. And this goes back to May 1st, 1865. You've heard me talk about this before. I know more people are talking about it now. I saw some social media posts, and people are circulating the information that actually comes from the Time magazine article called The Overlooked Black History of Memorial Day. That Time magazine article came out May 22nd, 2020. Okay. And I actually did a broadcast 2 years ago. It's on YouTube where we dealt with the African American origins of Memorial Day as well. All right. I want to go back to this article here. And the call-in number is 313-778-7600. If you have a quick question or comment, 313-778-7600. I want to remind you, you can still register for the online course that I teach on Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So we deal with thousands of years of history, and we deal with what led to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. It's a 9-week online course that I teach. When you scroll down the homepage of our website, you'll see the information for radio show. We're here 6 days a week, and you can listen to podcasts as well. You click right here. We have the information for the show. We have the flyer. Click right here to register here. It takes you to the next page. Click on enroll. We do the class live. All the sessions are recorded. If you miss anything, you can go back and watch it. You'll still have access to the course even after it's over. It's a 9-week online course. We deal with about 18 hours of teaching in total, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's regularly $130. It's on sale now, $60 since we're about halfway through the course. As soon as you register, you can watch the class we just did this past Saturday. Also, you can watch the class where archaeologist Nubia Wardford did the presentation for our class dealing with the origin of ancient Kush and the African queens of antiquity. Okay, so we dealt with some ancient African history as well. All right, we're going to post a link here or visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa understand the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And the Maafa is a Kiswahili word, which means the great disaster, which refers to our Holocaust, the transatlantic slave trade. All right, I want to go back to, there's an article here from history.com called Memorial Day. And this deals with Memorial Day history. And I'm also referencing my notes. I have 6 pages of notes on the history of Memorial Day, because I've dealt with this previous year. So I'm referencing my notes at the same time. Right before the break, we talked about how on May 5th, 1868, General John A. Logan, leader of an organization for Northern Civil War veterans, called for a nationwide day of remembrance later that month, later May 1868. Now, this is just 3 years after the Civil War ended, and we're going to deal with some Civil War history also in just a minute to recap this, because you have to understand some Civil War history to understand what takes place during Reconstruction. Now, the 30th of May, 1868, he said, is designated for the purpose of strewing with flowers or otherwise decorating the graves of comrades who died in defense of their country during the late rebellion, and whose bodies now lie in almost every city, village, and hamlet, churchyard in the land, he proclaimed. Okay, so the date of Decoration Day, as he called it, was chosen because it was not the anniversary of any particular battle. It was not the anniversary of any particular battle. Now, on the first Decoration Day, or what white people acknowledged as the first Decoration Day, General James Garfield made a speech at Arlington National Cemetery, and 5,000 participants decorated the graves of the 20,000 Civil War soldiers buried there. All right. Now, originally, Memorial Day just dealt with the soldiers that died in the Civil War, because this is before World War I, before World War II, etc. Now it acknowledges all people, all soldiers who have died in the various wars, not just the Civil War. Okay. All right. Now, many northern states held similar commemorative events and reprised the tradition in subsequent years. By 1890, each one had made Decoration Day an official state holiday. By 1890, each state had made Decoration Day an official state holiday. Southern states, on the other hand, continued to honor the dead on separate days until after World War I. Okay, until after World War I. And I want to go back to this picture here of the 54th Regiment. Where's that one? Let me pull this up here just a second. Okay. 54th Massachusetts Regiment, July 1863. Okay, let's continue here. All right, so for decades, Memorial Day continued to be observed on May 30th. Okay, for decades, Memorial Day continued to be observed on May 30th, the date that General Logan had selected for the first Decoration Day. But in 1968, the U.S. Congress passed what's known as the Uniform Monday Holiday Act, the Uniform Monday Holiday Act, which established Memorial Day as the last Monday in May in order to create a 3-day weekend for federal employees. Okay, so this is how it goes from Memorial Day goes from being celebrated on May 30th to the last day in May. Okay, is known the U.S. Congress in 1968 passed what's known as the Uniform Monday Holiday Act. Okay, which established Memorial Day as the last Monday in May in order to create a 3-day weekend for federal employees. Now, this change went into effect in 1971. The same law also declared Memorial Day as a federal holiday. Now, if we look at briefly some Civil War history, to understand how all this is connected. Rather, when we look at Abraham Lincoln becoming president-elect in early November, November 3rd, right about November 3rd, 1860. Okay, Abraham Lincoln becoming president-elect. He was the candidate for a newly formed party called the Republican Party. All right, the Republican Party was founded in 1854 by groups of abolitionists, and this was the Republican Party was founded as a result of what's known as the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 dealt with leaving it up to those people who were going to inhabit land out west, leaving it up to them to determine whether or not they were going to have slavery or not. Okay, this is the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. And prior to that, they tried to have a balance between slaveholding states and free states coming into the Union, slaveholding states and free states. So the Republican Party is going to be formed to be the counter to the Democratic Party at the time. The Whig Party, which is founded in 1830, somewhere around 1834, the Whig Party is dying out, WHIG, and the Republican Party is going to be formed. So early November 1860, Abraham Lincoln becomes president-elect. Southern states fear that Lincoln is going to free the slaves. Okay, so December 20th, 1860, 6 weeks after Lincoln becomes president-elect, December 20th, 1860, South Carolina is the first state to secede from the Union. December 20th, 1860. That's going to be followed by 6 other states. Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas. Okay, they're going to elect to secede from the Union, and they're going to form what's known as the Confederate States of America, the CSA, the Federal States of America. They formed this in February of 1861. Now, the Confederacy is going to elect Jefferson Davis, who was a former Secretary of War and a hero of the Mexican-American War of 1846 to 1848. And, I just did a couple weeks ago, we did a show dealing with the history of slavery and the Mexican-American War and showing the relationship between the Mexican-American War and slavery. And that's Mexican-American War is 1846 to 1848. And we know that the year before the Mexican-American War started, Texas was admitted into the Union as a slaveholding state. Okay. And so you have Texas being admitted into the Union as a slaveholding state. You have Texas winning their independence from Mexico in 1836. And also you have the Texas Rangers, who are going to start right about 1836. They're going to start as bounty hunters who are hired by slave owners in Texas to go into Mexico and capture runaway slaves, because a lot of enslaved Africans will run away to Mexico because Mexico is free territory. We talked about the Southern Underground Railroad going into Mexico. All right. So all this history, we have to understand the chronology of this history. You're going to have what's known as the Compromise of 1850, which comprised of 5 congressional bills. One of those bills dealt with the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, which allowed authorities up north to deputize white people to hunt down runaway slaves run away from the South, even though the North was free territory. And they could capture them, take them back into, return them to their masters, take them back into the Southern territory. So because of the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, and you see this depicted in the movie in the movie Harriet, the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. Because of that, that's going to cause more runaway slaves to go into Canada. And this is going to galvanize abolitionist forces again, even more so, the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. Then you have Harriet Beecher Stowe, who writes the book Uncle Tom's Cabin in 1852, which is based upon the life of a runaway slave from Maryland named Josiah Henson. And Josiah Henson runs away with his family. They go into Canada. They run away on the Underground Railroad. They go into Canada. He becomes a Methodist minister and an educator and works on the Underground Railroad. Helps runaway slaves. He writes his autobiography. Harriet Beecher Stowe reads it, and she patterns the fictitious character of Uncle Tom after the real life man named Josiah Henson. All right. There's an episode of The Jeffersons that deals with the real Uncle Tom and Josiah Henson. And you have Louise Jefferson's cousin, I think it is, who's a butler. And he reads books in the white man he works for has a library in his home, and he reads books. And he schools George and Lionel on who the real Uncle Tom is. Okay, Josiah Henson. All right, so you have this taking place. That's 1852. The book Uncle Tom's Cabin comes out. It becomes an international bestseller. Sells 300,000 copies its first year. It exposes America to the real horrors of slavery, and it becomes banned in the state of Maryland. It becomes banned in the state of Maryland, where Josiah Henson is from. 1854, the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 takes place. Later in 1854, also the Republican Party is going to be founded. All right, and then their candidate, November 1860, is going to win the presidency, Abraham Lincoln. Southern states think that Lincoln is going to free the slaves, so they start seceding from the Union. When you read their statements of secession, they tell you that slavery is essential to their way of life and essential to their wealth. Okay, so they're going to secede from the Union to maintain slavery and maintain their way of life and maintain their wealth. All right, they didn't do all this for states' rights. They did this for the right to maintain slavery, because they fear Lincoln is going to free their slaves, and they have billions of dollars invested in slaves. This is tied to their wealth. Okay, so let's continue here. So they're going to elect Jefferson Davis, white supremacist slave owner Jefferson Davis from Mississippi, as their president, okay, of the Confederacy. And they began organizing an independent government modeled after the U.S. Constitution, with caveats guaranteeing slavery. And on April 12th, 1861, at Fort Sumter in South Carolina, the Confederacy began fighting to assert its independence when Confederate troops fired on Fort Sumter in Charleston, South Carolina, the Charleston, South Carolina harbor. Now, soon after this, the states Arkansas, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia are going to join the Confederacy as well. So in the Civil War, you're going to have 620,000 soldiers who are killed, approximately 2.4 million served. Somewhere around 186,000 or so. Some sources say 200,000 African Americans are going to serve in the U.S. Civil War as well. Okay, and if you read the article from, let me see, if we look at the one dealing with, which one is this? We look at the one, the earliest Memorial Day, dealing with African Americans, from history.com. You have that one. They have some good information in there. And then also, let's pull up the one from the other one from history.com, dealing with the history of Memorial Day. Let me see. I think they have this in here as well. Just a second. I want to pull this up. Okay. Let's see. Where is that? I want to see which article had that information in. Okay. If we look at the one from, just give you some sources, because I have a number of different sources. I'm referring to my notes, and I have a number of different sources here. If you look at the one from time.com, and I just got a subscription to Time because they kept telling me to subscribe. So I just got a 1-year subscription for $15. You'll see me quoting a whole lot of articles in Time now because to get my money's worth out. But anyway, they talk about approximately 620,000 soldiers died in the U.S. Civil War, about 2/3 from disease, Okay. So read this article from time.com also, the overlooked Black history of Memorial Day. Now, this photo right here, this is a picture. Make sure this is up on the screen share. This photo right here, just a second, there's a clip playing. This photo right here is from April 1865. It's a photo of the graves of Union soldiers buried at the race course turned Confederate prison, where historians believe the earliest Memorial Day ceremony took place, okay, in May 1st, 1865. They believe it took place there. This photo right here. All right, let's continue. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my notes for this. So, yes, 620,000 killed in the U.S. Civil War, about 2.4 million served. And General Joseph E. Johnston handed over the last Confederate army to General William T. Sherman near Durham, North Carolina on April 26, 1865. So the Civil War is coming to an end. Now, Harvard University, David Blight, historian from Yale University, was in a Harvard University library doing research for a book called Reunion and Race. And this was in about 1996, when he stumbled upon a box containing the paperwork of he stumbled upon a box containing the paperwork of a Union veterans organization and a folder labeled First Decoration Day. Now, this information found there led him to South Carolina's former Washington Racecourse and Jockey Club. Okay, Washington Racecourse and Jockey Club, which was a prestigious horse racing track that was turned into a prison for Union soldiers. All right, so the Confederacy is going to hold Union soldiers at this racetrack turned prison. Okay, and you're going to see this take place during the Civil War. They have to find places to hold prisoners. Okay, Union troops, Confederate troops, they have to find places to hold prisoners. So they have to have these makeshift prisons. All right. And then I want to flip over here to the article from history.com. One of the earliest Memorial Day ceremonies was held by free African Americans. Also, Snopes.com has some good information dealing with the origins of Memorial Day as well. Okay, so Yale University historian David W. Blight came across this information. Okay, and he said there was a file labeled First Decoration Day, and inside on a piece of cardboard was a narrative handwritten by an old veteran, plus a date referencing an article in the New York Tribune. The narrative told the essence of the story that I ended up telling in my book of this march on the racetrack in 1865. So the racetrack in question, and here's a picture of it, the clubhouse at the Charleston racetrack where the 1865 Memorial Day events took place. Okay. The racetrack in question was the Washington Racecourse and Jockey Club in Charleston, South Carolina. In the late stages of the U.S. Civil War, the Confederate Army transformed the formerly posh country club into a makeshift prison for Union captives. More than 260 Union soldiers died from exposure while being held in the racetrack's open air infield. Okay. And the actual numbers here, in one source shows at least 257 died. Okay. Because I've been researching this for some time. One source says at least 257 died of exposure. So their bodies were hastily buried in a mass grave behind the grandstands. Okay. The bodies were hastily buried behind a mass grave behind the grandstand, in a mass grave behind the grandstands. Now, some 28 African-American workmen went to the site, reburied the Union dead properly, and built a fence, built a high fence around the cemetery. They whitewashed the fence and built an archway over an entrance. They whitewashed the fence and built an archway over an entrance on which they inscribed the words "Martyrs of the Racecourse." Martyrs of the Racecourse. Then the African-American Charlestonians, in cooperation with white missionaries, teachers, staged an unforgettable parade of 10,000 people on the slaveholders' racecourse. Now, if you, and this account, David Blight found in two sources, the New York Tribune and the Charleston Courier, as we talked about at the beginning of this broadcast. If you go back and watch the broadcast I did earlier this month, dealing with the Kentucky Derby, and how African Americans were the first winners of the Kentucky Derby, Oliver Lewis, and we know we're in the Triple Crown season. Okay. So the Triple Crown, the three most coveted races in horse racing, the Triple Crown consists of the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness, and the Belmont Stakes. 9:10 a.m. the Superstation WFDF is going to air the Belmont Stakes on June 5th. Also, we'll go to the phone lines in just a minute here. They're going to air the Belmont Stakes on June 5th, and I'll bring up the actual information here. But those are the three coveted races in horse racing. And African Americans, we were winning all those races. We know the first Kentucky Derby was ran in 1875, and it was won by an African American man who was 19 years old named Oliver Lewis. Okay, it was ran in May 1875. 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF is going to air the Belmont horse race on Saturday, June 5th, 2021, 5 p.m. to 7:18 p.m. 5 p.m. to 7:18 p.m. So you can listen on 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF. You can also download the iHeartRadio app and search for 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF. You can listen to the Belmont Stakes horse race. All right, let's continue. So you see, all this history is connected. And we know a lot of the first jockeys, horse racing, we see goes back to slavery. And even in England, we see them, the wealthy, being involved in horse racing. But a lot of the first jockeys in this country are going to be African-American male slaves. All right. And we see this carry over into who's winning the Kentucky Derby. Jimmy Wingfield and Isaac Murray and Alonzo Lonnie Clayton. A lot of 13 of the 15 jockeys who ran in that first Kentucky Derby in 1875 were African-American jockeys. And we got pushed out of horse racing, just like the real history of the first Decoration Day or the first Memorial Day has been hidden and suppressed, just like for 50 years, the history of the Tulsa Race Massacre was hidden and suppressed. Okay. For a long time, the dominance of African-American jockeys in horse racing was hidden and suppressed as well. Okay. So we have to resurrect this history. We have to remember, we have to put these pieces back together, just as the 13 pieces of Osiris' body or Osiris's body were put back together, as we talked about in our Saturday class this past Saturday, just as they were put back together and he was resurrected. We have to do the same thing with this history. Okay, let's go quickly to the phone lines. Let's go to line one. We have Teddy on line one. Teddy, welcome to the African History Network show. Thanks for holding. Tell us where you're calling from. Oh, you come from Montgomery, Alabama. Okay. That's where the Montgomery bus boycott took place. But go ahead. What'd you say? When did it become established as a holiday? Well, we see it. We okay.
Before 1921, could we infer that there was a Memorial Day at the time of the Tulsa race riot of May 31st, 1921, which I kind of scantily looked up, which was on a Tuesday. So with the activity, the kind of type of activity and destruction that was caused in Tulsa, and because that was at or around a holiday time, could you say then that you had people coming from all parts of surrounding Tulsa to contribute to the destruction because of this day? I mean, it's interesting because today we have Memorial Day. We also have the observance of the centennial of Tulsa.
Right. Okay, so just for the sake of time, hold on. So just for the sake of time, because we're about to run out of time here, we're on live radio. Back at that time, by 1890, most states had their own. By 1890, most states were celebrating their own Decoration Day. It was still being commemorated on May 30th at that time. Okay, it hadn't switched to the last Monday in May that is signed into law in 1971. Okay, the Uniform Holiday Act. So it was probably May 30th. Okay, it's probably May 30th at that time. You're going to have a large Ku Klux Klan influence. The Ku Klux Klan instigated the sentiments and things like that. So you have to you probably had some white people coming from outside of Tulsa, but you had enough inside Tulsa to do the damage. Okay, because you had a rising force in the Ku Klux Klan. Okay, you had about 1,000 Klan members there in Oklahoma. I can't remember if it was exactly Tulsa. They had 1,000, but you're going to have a rising number of Ku Klux Klan members also. Okay, but the Memorial Day or the Decoration Day, that ain't what really set this stuff off. This stuff was brewing with Tulsa, and this goes back to the Red Summer of 1919, 2 years prior, when after the World War I, and you had 25 major race riots across this country. When these white men come back home from serving in the military, they can't find jobs, and the jobs are being filled by African Americans and immigrants who were here. And you're going to have these racial tensions explode with 25 major race riots in 1919. And also at the same time, you had the great pandemic, the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918 taking place, which went into 1919 also. All right. And you're going to have these white men who are upset because they can't find jobs. And then you have this wealth in North Tulsa and Black Wall Street. Okay. And the Ku Klux Klan is going to instigate these tensions. We're going to talk about this more on Tuesday's show. All right. Because it's also suspected that the attack was planned. The way all this came together, it's also suspected that this attack was planned as well. But it's important for us to understand, and you call back to tomorrow's show. We're here Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time. It's important to understand that we rebuilt Black Wall Street after the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. By 1926, it was thriving. Dr. W.B. Du Bois visits and writes about how it's thriving again. We rebuilt it. It's prosperous in the 1950s and 1960s. It's going to be the expressways that come through starting in about 1970. Interstate 244 and US 75 freeway. They're going to come through and wipe out businesses. Homes are going to be taken. African-American homes are going to be taken by eminent domain. So after we rebuilt, Black Wall Street is prosperous again. And some accounts are that it was better than the first time, but the expressways are going to come through and destroy it. Okay. That's federal dollars. That's federal dollars. All right. Those watching on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, keep watching. We're going to keep broadcasting for a few more minutes. We're out of time here on 910 AM, the Superstation WFDF. Right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace. All right, stand by. We're going to keep going. How's everybody doing? If you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show. This helps us to keep broadcasting 6 days a week, keep doing the research, pay some of the bills, etc. All right. Also, I'll be in Atlanta, June 18th through the 20th for the Juneteenth Festival. Okay, the Juneteenth parade, Atlanta Parade and Music Festival at Centennial Park, 9th annual Juneteenth Festival, Centennial Olympic Park, Friday, June 18th through Sunday, June 20th. Okay, I'll be doing presentations there. I'm speaking Saturday and Sunday at the amphitheater, and I also have a vendor booth there as well. Okay, the Juneteenth Festival. So be sure to check me out there. Visit the website. JuneteenthATL.com. JuneteenthATL.com. And let me pull this up here. Let me go over to this just a second. Yeah, visit the website JuneteenthATL.com for more information. They're going to have headliners and national speakers. They usually have about 100+ vendors, African American vendors, Caribbean vendors, African vendors there. I talked to Bob Johnson, the organizer, not Bob Johnson for BET, but another Bob Johnson. So he said Angie Stone is going to be performing again this year. So check that out. We'll post this information at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. But you can visit that website, JuneteenthATL.com, JuneteenthATL.com for more information. All right, and it's also free. It's a free event, free and open to the public. Be sure to come out and support African American vendors, African American businesses. Also, and look out for the African History Network there as well. All right, let's continue. Okay, everybody, share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. All right, let's continue. For those who just joining us, we're dealing with the hidden African American origin of Memorial Day. So we see the clubhouse at the race course where Union soldiers were killed. This is in 1865 in Charleston, South Carolina. All right, let me bring this back up. Okay, so let's continue. So you saw black Charlestonians, African American Charlestonians, in cooperation with white missionaries and teachers, staged an unforgettable parade of 10,000 people on the slaveholders race course. 10,000 people on the slaveholders race course. And you have to understand there was probably a great sense of pride for these African Americans to be able to do this on their former slaveholders race course, because the race course was a symbol of wealth of the aristocracy. It was a symbol of Southern wealth. Okay. And, during slavery, a lot of African American boys or young men were forced to be jockeys, and it can be something dangerous. You had, cases where they were killed, injured, being jockeys. Okay. So it's probably a great sense of pride for them to be able to have this march on a symbol of wealth that the white aristocracy had in the South. You also had 3,000 black children who carried bouquets of flowers and sang John Brown's Body. Members of the famed 54th Massachusetts and other black Union regiments were in attendance and performed double-time marches. Black ministers recited verses from the Bible as well. And I'm going to flip back over to this article here from history.com, which deals with one of the earliest Memorial Days, And then we see the Battle of Fort Wagner on Morris Island in the 54th Regiment. This is a Union attack, took place July 18th, 1863, led by the 54th Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry. Now, if the news reports are accurate, the 1865 gathering at the Charleston racetrack would be the earliest Memorial Day commemoration on record. Historian David Blight, excitedly called the Avery Institute of Afro-American History and Culture at the College of Charleston, looking for more information on the historic event. He said, "I've never heard of it, they told me," said David Blight. This never happened. But it was clear from the newspaper reports that a Memorial Day observance was organized by freed slaves in Charleston at least a year before other U.S. cities and 3 years before the first national observance. How had this been lost to history for over a century? How had this been lost to history for over a century? David Blight said this was a story that had really been suppressed both in the local memory and certainly the national memory. But nobody who had witnessed it could ever have forgotten it. Nobody who had witnessed it could ever have forgotten it. Now, David Blight kept digging for more information, but the only other mention he found of the racetrack event was in a 1916 correspondence sent from a women's Civil War Historical Society in New Orleans to its sister chapel in Charleston, South Carolina, asking about a big parade of freed slaves on a horse track at the end of the war. Quote, "I regret that I was unable to gather any official information in answer to this," wrote the Charleston Society's president. "I regret that I was unable to gather any official information in answer to this." Now, David Blight said that's such a telling statement. The woman who wrote the letter may not have known about it, but the fact that she didn't tells the story. Okay, so there appears to be a concerted effort to suppress this history. It appears there was a concerted effort to suppress this history. Now, I'm referring to my notes here because I have 6 pages of notes, and I'm citing different sources. So after 50 years after the Civil War ended, someone at the United Daughters of the Confederacy asked the Ladies Memorial Association of Charleston to confirm that May 1st, 1865 tribute occurred, and received a reply from S.C. Beckwith, the initials S.C. Beckwith. Quote, I regret that I was unable to gather any official information in answer to this, end quote. So this is who responded to David Blight, okay? S.C. Beckwith. Now, whether Beckwith actually knew about the tribute or not, David Blight argues the exchange illustrates, quote, how white Charlestonians suppressed from memory this founding, end quote. And let me, okay, I think that's from the Time magazine article. Hold on, just bear with me, because I have like 4 or 5 different sources. I have 6 pages of notes, and it's typed up. Okay, I have 6 pages of notes dealing with this history. So I want to go to the actual citation for this to show you this here. So just bear with me here for a minute. This would be down here. This is from this article from Time magazine, and this would be S.C. Beckwith right here. Okay, let's go to this, because I like to be precise with the history as much as possible. But since I have the citation in front of me, I want to go actually to it. Okay, right here. About 50 years after the Civil War ended, this is from the Time magazine article entitled The Overlooked Black History of Memorial Day. The Overlooked Black History of Memorial Day. About 50 years after the Civil War ended, someone at the United Daughters of the Confederacy asked the Ladies Memorial Association of Charleston, South Carolina, to confirm that the May 1st, 1865 tribute occurred, and received a reply from one S.C. Beckwith. S.C. Beckwith. Quote, I regret that I was unable to gather any official information in answer to this, end quote. Now, whether S.C. Beckwith actually knew about the tribute or not, David Blight, historian David Blight from Yale University, argues the exchange illustrates, quote, how white Charlestonians suppressed from memory this founding. How white Charlestonians suppressed from memory this founding. Now, a 1937 book also incorrectly stated that James Redpath single-handedly organized the tribute when it really was a group effort. So it appears, they're just jacking the history and just giving one white man credit for what many African Americans did. A 1937 book also incorrectly stated that James Redpath single-handedly organized the tribute when it was really a group effort, and that it took place on May 30th, when they said it took place on May 30th, but it actually took place on May 1st, 1865, and what African Americans organized. Okay. Now, that book also diminished the role of the African Americans involved by referring to them as, quote, black hands, which only knew that the dead they were honoring had raised them from a condition of servitude. Okay, they're referring to Union soldiers, at least 257 dead Union soldiers. Okay, this book diminished the role of the African Americans involved by referring to them as, quote, black hands, which only knew that the dead they were honoring had raised them from a condition of servitude, end quote. Now, the origin story that did stick involves a 1868 call from General John A. Logan, president of a Union Army veterans group that we talked about earlier, urging Americans to decorate the graves of the fallen with flowers on May 30th of that year. So that was May 30th, 1868. The ceremony that took place in Arlington National Cemetery that day has been considered the first official Memorial Day celebration. But what African Americans did May 1st, 1865 got lost in history, got suppressed. Now, Memorial Day became a national holiday 2 decades later in 1889 and took a century before it was moved in 1968 to the last Monday of May, where it remains today. That goes back to the 1971 Uniform Holiday Act, the Uniform Holiday Act of 1971. According to historian David Blight, Hampton Park, named after Confederate General Wade Hampton, replaced the gravesite at the Martyrs of the Racecourse, and the graves were re-entered in the 1880s at a national cemetery in Beaufort, South Carolina. The fact that free African slaves, Memorial Day tribute is not as well remembered is emblematic of the struggle that would follow as African Americans fight to be fully recognized for their contributions to American society continues to this day. The fact that the freed slaves Memorial Day tribute is not as well remembered is emblematic of the struggle that would follow as African Americans fight to be fully recognized for their contributions to American society continues today. All right. So we have that history, and that's from time.com. I'm looking through my sources. I'm looking through the rest of my notes here. Okay. So we basically got that. We've got that. Martyrs of the Racecourse. We got that. Snopes.com has some information that goes a little deeper into this. So I'm going to refer to my notes on this here. Because I looked at Snopes.com a few years ago in that fact checking and tracing this information. So we're going to go, I'm going to flip over to that. So just a second here. All right. How's everybody doing? Everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in as well. Then the first article I saw dealing with this history, I think this was the first article. It's from theroot.com. Theroot.com. And this is one of the sources for my notes also. Memorial Day, blacks were first to celebrate, scholar says. Memorial Day, blacks were first to celebrate, scholar says. This article is from May 27th, 2011. May 27, 2011. And it talks about Yale history professor David Blight and the research he was doing and coming across this information and coming across a folder labeled First Decoration Day. Okay. So this was the first article, if I remember correctly, that I saw dealing with this history. And then year after year, you start having a little bit more history coming out. Time Magazine wrote their article May 2020. And then the one from history.com dealing with one of the earliest Memorial Day ceremonies was held by freed African Americans. That article was not written until 2019. So each year I would read the regular article they have dealing with Memorial Day history and left out the African American influence. They wrote this one here originally May 24th, 2019, and it's updated May 10th, 2020. So the root.com was far ahead of the History Channel, history.com, dealing with the African American roots of Memorial Day. Then Black America Web picked this up, 2011, 2012, news1.com. They all had articles, but they were far ahead of history.com. Okay, let me flip back over here to my notes for just a second. I want to get through the rest of this. So this deals with more research from David Blight, historian David Blight. Let's see here. So this deals with the first Decoration Day, May 1st, 1865 in South Carolina. African Americans founded Decoration Day at a graveyard of 257 Union soldiers labeled Martyrs of the Racecourse, May 1st, 1865 in Charleston, South Carolina. The first Decoration Day, as this event came to be recognized in some circles in the North, involved an estimated 10,000 people, most of them former slaves. During April of 1865, 28 African American men from one of the local churches built a suitable enclosure for the burial ground at the racecourse. In some 10 days, they constructed a fence 10 feet high, enclosing the burial ground, and landscaped the graves into neat rows. And I want to go back to that picture of the photo of the graves. And I think we have it. That's the racetrack. The article from Time magazine shows the graves here. What happened? Okay, the article from Time magazine shows the graves. I want to flip back over to that. Okay. An April 1865 photo of the graves of Union soldiers buried at the racecourse turned Confederate prison, where historians believe the earliest Memorial Day ceremony took place. All right, so during April 1865, 28 African American men from one of the local churches built a suitable enclosure for the burial ground at the racecourse. In some 10 days, they constructed a fence 10 feet high enclosing the burial ground and landscaped the graves into neat rows. They landscaped the graves into neat rows. The wooden fence was whitewashed and an archway was built over the gate to the enclosure. On the arch, painted in black letters, the workmen inscribed Martyrs of the Racecourse. Martyrs of the Racecourse. Now, at 9 a.m., in the morning on May 1st, 1865, the procession to this special cemetery began as 3,000 African-American school children newly enrolled in freedmen's schools, the freedmen's schools organized by the Freedmen Bureau, the U.S. Bureau of Freedmen, Refugees, and Abandoned Lands. They marched around the race course, each with an armload of roses and singing the song John Brown's Body, John Brown's Body. The children were followed by 300 African-American women representing the Patriotic Association, a group organized to distribute clothing and other goods among the freed people. See, we had all types of organizations during slavery and after slavery that supported our people. You've heard me talk about the cooperatives, the co-ops, Free African Society, different cooperatives that we had to help our people. We had them during slavery and we had them after slavery as well. Okay, I'm going to flip over to this other picture here of the clubhouse. Let's go to this one here. Okay, so this is the clubhouse at the race course where Union soldiers were held prisoners. Okay, this is the course house at the racetrack. The clubhouse at the racetrack, I should say. All right, so and I'm gonna grab Dr. Jessica Gordon Nimhard's book right here, Collective Courage, because this ties into the information of her book, Collective Courage, A History of African American Cooperative Economic Thought and Practice, Collective Courage by Dr. Jessica Gordon Nimhard, which deals with the history of these co-ops that we have, cooperative economics. Cooperative economics does not mean capitalism dressed up in red, black, and green. That's not cooperative economics. Okay, I'm not attacking capitalism. I'm just saying. See, one of the problems is that when you go study, even in Black Wall Street, the Greenwood District, we had cooperatives. We had cooperatives all throughout our history. Whether you're talking about the Colored Merchants Association, founded in about 1928, coming out of the National Negro Business League, founded by Booker T. Washington in about 1900. Whether you talk about the Colored Farmers Union, 1886 in Texas, it grew to have about 1.2 million members. Whether you talk about the Free African Society, going back to 1787, all these different cooperatives that we had. We were raising money to bury people. We were raising money during slavery. You had cooperatives that would raise money to buy people out of slavery, to buy people's freedoms, buy people's freedom. And the cooperatives, a lot of these organizations we formed, the members were part owners. One of the most popular type of cooperative is a credit union. In a credit union, the members who have accounts, bank accounts, things like this, credit union accounts, they're also part owners of the credit union. Okay. And one of the things that happened was that African Americans went to white business schools or went to business schools, possibly at an HBCU that taught white business principles. And we basically learned white capitalism, not cooperative economics. And then we brought these white business principles back to the African American community to try to implement them. They may work for you and your family, but they don't have the real benefit that the cooperatives had historically. That concept of the cooperatives are concepts we brought with us to this country from Africa. Those are African concepts. And when you break up the cooperatives, you break up the cooperation. When you break up the cooperatives, you break up the cooperation between African Americans largely, and you're using white business principles. Okay. And that doesn't work for us historically. It may work for you and your family, but it doesn't benefit the community. It doesn't have the same benefit that the cooperatives had. So Dr. Jessica Gordon Nimhard breaks all this stuff down in her book, Collective Courage. Okay, I just don't have time to get into this because we're done with this topic right now. But I've talked about this before in the past, and I interviewed her back in about 2014, so it's archived. Just Google my name or her name, or when you go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, click on Listen to Podcasts, and go back to 2014, and we have like 1,000 podcasts archived at Blog Talk Radio, blogtalkradio.com/The African History Network Show. All right, so how's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. I hope you're learning something because this is a lot of work. The children were followed by 300 African-American women representing the Patriotic Association, a group organized to distribute clothing and other goods among the freed people, the former slaves, okay, the freed people. The women carried baskets of flowers, wreaths, and crosses to the burial ground. The Mutual Aid Society, this is another cooperative that we had, the Mutual Aid Society, a benevolent association of African-American men, next marched in cadence around the track and into the cemetery, followed by large groups of white and African-American citizens. All dropped their spring blossoms on the graves in a scene recorded by a newspaper correspondent who said, when all had left, the holy mounds, the tops, the sides, and the spaces between them were one mass of flowers. Not a speck of earth could be seen. And as the breeze wafted the sweet perfumes from them outside and beyond, there were few eyes among those who knew the meaning of the ceremony that were not dim with tears of joy. There were few eyes among those who knew the meaning of the ceremony that were not dim with tears of joy, end quote. Okay, this was a account from a newspaper correspondent who was there. While the adults marched around the graves, the children were gathered in a nearby grove where they sang America, the song America, and also We'll Rally Around the Flag. And they sang the Star Spangled Banner. They probably ain't know a white supremacist named Francis Scott Key wrote it in 1814. They probably didn't know that during the War of 1812, but okay, I understand. You're newly freed and you just happy. I trust me, I'm not beating up on them. I understand. Okay. The official dedication ceremony was conducted by the ministers of all the African American churches in Charleston, South Carolina, with prayer, the reading of biblical passages, and the singing of spirituals. African American Charlestonians gave birth to an American tradition. African American Charlestonians gave birth to an American tradition. In so doing, they declared the meaning of the war in the most public way possible by their labor, their work, the Civil War, the U.S. Civil War. They declared the meaning of the U.S. Civil War in the most public way possible. Their labor, their words, their songs, and their solemn parade of roses, lilacs, and marching feet on the old planters' race course. On the old planters' race course. Once again, the race course was a symbol of Southern wealth, built on the backs of African people, because it was African American jockeys that were racing those horses, and it was many African Americans who were trainers of the horses and tended to the horses, the things like this. So it was a symbol of the wealth of the Confederacy. Okay, so I can imagine the pride that they had to be able to march on the race course that was a symbol of the aristocracy, a symbol of the Confederacy, and this also symbolizing the defeat of the Confederacy as well, the defeat of their former slave masters. Now, after the dedication, the crowds gathered at the race course grandstand to hear some 30 speeches by Union officers, local African American ministers, and abolitionist missionaries. picnics, where they say picnics, outings, cookouts ensued around the grounds, and in the afternoon, a full brigade of Union infantry, included colored troops, marched in double column around the martyrs' graves and held a drill on the infield of the race course. The war was over, and Memorial Day had been founded by African Americans in a ritual of remembrance and consecration. In a ritual of remembrance and consecration. I want to bring up this picture here of African American Union soldiers. Now, although contemporaneous accounts from the Charleston Daily Courier describe and document the 1865 ceremony that took place there, and the event was one of the earliest known observances similar to what we would now recognize as Memorial Day, whether it was truly the first ceremony and what influence, if any, it might have had on later observances are still a matter of contention. Professor Blight termed it the first Memorial Day, and appears to be the first Memorial Day. This was I forgot which year to see this from Snopes.com, but it appears to be this took place before the one in 1868, but it's not clear that the one May 1st, 1865 influenced the one in May 1868 that General Logan called for. It's not clear that there's a connection between the two, but the one in 1865 took place first. Professor David Blight termed it the first Memorial Day because it predated most of the other contenders, but he noted he has no evidence that it led to General Logan's call for a national holiday in 1868. Quote, I'm much more interested in the meaning that's being conveyed in that incredible ritual than who's first, end quote, David Blight said, historian David Blight said, but African Americans did it first, though. Okay. Now, when we look at the evolution of Memorial Day as Decoration Day gradually came to be known, originally honored only those who lost their lives while fighting in the Civil War. But during World War I, the United States found itself embroiled in another major conflict, and the holiday evolved to commemorate American military personnel who died in all wars, including World War II, the Vietnam War, the Korean War, and the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. For decades, Memorial Day continued to be observed on May 30th, the date that General Logan had selected for the first Decoration Day. But as I said, in 1968, Congress passed what's known as the Uniform Monday Holiday Act, which established Memorial Day as the last Monday in May in order to create a 3-day weekend for federal employees. The change went into effect in 1971. The same law also declared Memorial Day as a federal holiday. When we look at Memorial Day traditions, we see cities and towns across the United States, host Memorial Day parades each year, often incorporating military personnel and members of veterans organizations. Some of the largest parades take place in Chicago, New York, and Washington, D.C. Americans also observe Memorial Day by visiting cemeteries and memorials. On a less somber note, many people throw parties and barbecues on the holiday, perhaps because it unofficially marks the beginning of summer. And we know a lot of people were traveling this weekend. I was at the cemetery today to visit the grave sites of my aunt and my uncle, who passed away the past few years. So that is a history of the hidden African-American origins of Memorial Day, the hidden African-American origin of Memorial Day. All right, so there's something else that we created that we only recently started getting credit for. But this ties it to how this history is suppressed as well. We saw the history of the Tulsa Race Massacre was suppressed for at least 50 years. People were threatened for trying to do research The White Tulsa newspaper for decades did not write about it. Okay, so this is why this history is so important. You know, a people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past, in the present, and the future to meet the needs of the community. And we also know historical events don't take place in a vacuum. They are the culmination of a sequence of events that take place that lead up to a larger event happening as well. All right, be sure to register for the online course that I teach on Saturdays, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. It's a 9-week online course that I teach. We deal with thousands of years of history, and we deal with what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. I do the class live. All the sessions are recorded, so you can go back and watch it over and over again. If you miss anything, you still have access to the course even after the course is over. So we do it Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We just posted a link here. You can register for it as soon as so when you scroll down our website, you'll see the information here for the online course. Click here to register here. It's on sale, $60, regularly $130, so it's like 54% off. Click right here to enroll. As soon as you enroll, you can start watching the course content. You can watch this past Saturday's class also. And you can watch the class that we did with Sister Nubia Wardford, who's an archaeologist. We dealt with the origins of ancient Kush and African queens of antiquity. We dealt with that a couple Saturdays ago. So I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips. It's a ton of information. Okay. You don't have to buy any of these books to follow along in class, but you can, if you want to get them for your personal library, that's fine. Also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, we have the DVD lecture and digital download of my 2.5-hour lecture I've done dealing with the history of Black Wall Street. I did this in 2014, Black Wall Street from Destruction to the Resurrection of Economic Empowerment. Black Wall Street from Destruction to the Resurrection of Economic Empowerment. It's a 2.5-hour lecture I've done dealing with the history of Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I deal with a timeline of history also leading up to the attack in 1921. And I deal with the founding of Tulsa, Creek Indians, about 1854, because this ties into the history of the Indian Removal Act of 1830 and the Dawes Allotment Act of 1887 and the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties of 1866. All this history is connected. Okay. So I'm going to post a link here. We have that on sale as well. And then all my lectures are available at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have bundle packs also. This is Black Wall Street from Destruction to the Resurrection of Economic Empowerment. Like I said before, we rebuilt Black Wall Street after the 1921 massacre, but the expressways are going to come through and destroy it really for good. So it used to have like 35, 36 blocks of businesses. Now you have one block of Black-owned businesses. That's what's left there in Greenwood. Also, we have the 15 DVD bundle pack of my lectures, the Michael Imhotep Black History Month DVD bundle pack. And you click right here, order here. It takes you to the next page. It's not loading properly. Here we go. And it shows you what's in the bundle pack. I have 3 of my lectures dealing with the film Black Panther, which is a deep movie and incorporates a lot of African culture and language and spiritual systems. We have a presentation I did dealing with the history of Black History Month, African American History Month, breaking the chains while we celebrate Black History Month. I have one dealing with Malcolm X, why is he still relevant 50 years later. One dealing with the distortion of Dr. King's legacy, presentation on the 3/5 Compromise of 1787 and the history of the Electoral College and how it works, the racist history of the white national anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance, A double lecture that I did with Dr. David Imhotep, author of the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. We did a double lecture here in Detroit back in 2013. So you get that as well. So there's a ton of information here. Also, you get Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. So I deal with some well-known and not so well-known African women in our history from all different time periods. This one right here is a really, really good presentation. African American resistance in the era of Donald Trump, voter suppression, reparations, and how elections have consequences. I deal with so much in that presentation. Also, this one here, Ancient Kemet, the winter solstice, and the history of Christmas. So I deal with the pre-Christian origins of Christmas. It takes us back to ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. We deal with the winter solstice festivals that took place on or around December 25th. Also, so that's a 3-hour presentation dealing with the history of Christmas. So that's at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com also. And then this 6 DVD bundle pack, Black Migration 1619 and 2019. We have this in a DVD and digital download format. So this one, I deal with the history of Juneteenth, the real history of Juneteenth. That's a 3-hour presentation. Also, we have Black Migration 1619 to 2019. Black Migration 1619 to 2019. We deal with that 400th year anniversary of 1619. I deal with the Red Summer 1919. There's a lot of information there. This presentation here, African Americans, ancient Africans in America before Native Americans, Columbus, or slavery. And let me see which one. Let's go back here. You can probably see it better. Then there's a 3-hour presentation that deals with the little known history of why African Americans switched from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party. And I deal with the Southern Strategy of 1928, called the Lily White Movement of 1928, which is an effort to push us out of the Republican Party. And we started slowly going over to the Democratic Party because they were more receptive to our issues, more receptive to our needs. So a lot of people don't know about the Lily White Movement in 1920. They think we switched over because of the Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 65. 2/3 of African Americans had already switched over to the Democratic Party by 1960. 2/3 of us had already switched over. Okay. And so I deal with that history. That's a 3-hour presentation. This one here deals with when Black men dominated horse racing and how organized effort forced them out. This deals with the history of African American jockeys and how we used to dominate horse racing, win Kentucky derbies and things like this. And this one here, 6 principles of political self-defense, understanding how public policies and laws affect the economic conditions of African Americans. That's a deep presentation. There are actually 2 lectures on that. There are 2 lectures that you'll get there. Okay, so we posted that here, Black Migration 1619 to 2019. We have that in DVD format and digital download format. That's at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. I have like 40 of my lectures there. Okay, and a lot of them we have in digital download format also. Okay, we got this one, Ancient Kemet, the Winter Solstice, and the History of Christmas. So this is all at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, our website. Let me see, what was that? And and we're going to post this one here. This deals with I posted Black Migrations, and this is the 15 DVD bundle pack also here. Okay, posted that. Let me post Black Migrations, and we talked about why we switched over from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party. A lot of people are commenting on the post that I did a couple of days ago dealing with Malcolm X's speech, the Ballot of the Bullet. And let's see, let's pull this up here. Okay. As I've said before, Malcolm delivered the Ballot of the Bullet 3 times that I know of. March 29th, 1964. and April 3rd, 1964, and April 4th, 1964. April 3rd, 1964, Corey Methodist Baptist Church in Cleveland, Ohio. And April 4th, 1964, in Detroit, King Solomon's Baptist Church in Detroit. A lot of people quote Malcolm. I hear people quote the speech, but they haven't read the entire speech. And you have to study the trajectory of Malcolm's life to really understand the speech also, and what was taking place at that time as well. Read all three versions of it. But the first one, March 29th, 1964, in Washington Heights, New York, that may be one of the most important ones right there. And then you have to read Malcolm's speech, By Any Means Necessary, June 28th, 1964. And that's after he comes back from Mecca. The Ballot of the Bullet was before he went to Mecca. Okay, it's late March 64, and it's right after he officially separates from the Nation of Islam. He officially separates from the Nation of Islam March 8th, 1964. Okay. If we look at this here, I'm going to pull this up. We'll look at this briefly, then we have to get out of here. Number one, in the speech, Malcolm X uses the term African Americans. So, for some reason, people think that Reverend Jesse Jackson invented the term African American, which he did not. And I've said that before. I'm going to flip over here to this post that I did. You also have to read the book Martin Malcolm in America, A Dream or a Nightmare by James H. Cone to really, really understand this. Okay, so I did this post. It's actually early Monday morning, 12:30 a.m. Monday morning, May 31st. And some of you all saw this post that I did. Let me see. It's got 427 likes so far. But I said, let me try to blow this up some more. Malcolm X, The Ballot of the Bullet, March 29th, 1964. Notice Malcolm X used the term African American in this speech. Malcolm is an excerpt from the speech. This is toward the end of it. We want to make them pass the strongest civil rights bill they ever passed, because we know that even after they pass it, they can't enforce it. Now this is before the civil rights bill passed. Okay, this is before June. This is before the civil rights workers, the three civil rights workers, Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney, were killed. Even though in the TV show, Godfather of Harlem, they show all this stuff taking place at the same time, it didn't. Malcolm delivered the Ballot of the Bullet first 3 months before Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney were killed. Okay, he delivered it first March 29th, 1964. Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney were killed June 21st, 1964. He delivered this speech 3 months before they were killed. And June 21st, 1964 is a week before Malcolm delivers his speech, By Any Means Necessary, announcing the formation of the Organization of Afro-American Unity. And he uses that phrase, by any means necessary, in that speech. That's June 28th, 1964, where he lays out the 5 platforms of the Organization of Afro-American Unity. Okay, so I like Godfather of Harlem, but they're playing with the timelines. They're playing with too much of this too much. Also, when Malcolm delivers the Ballot of the Bullet, it's before he goes to Mecca. He's clean shaven. Okay, like he is in this picture here. He's clean shaven. They show him doing the Ballot of the Bullet with a goatee. He starts wearing the facial hair after he goes to Mecca. He leaves from Mecca late April 64. So there's little things. If you're a historian, you can see little inaccuracies, historical inaccuracies in what they're doing, and they're conflating timelines together. But anyway, Hopefully it'll cause people to start doing like historical research. Too much creative license. So in the speech, Malcolm says we want to make them pass the strongest civil rights bill they ever passed, because we know that even after they pass it, they can't enforce it. Now, here Malcolm's talking about registering people to vote and organize. If anybody tells you Malcolm was against voting, they're a damn lie. They haven't studied Malcolm. Malcolm was not against voting. He's talking about voting strategically and pushing your issues and getting something tangible for your vote. Malcolm was not against voting. Okay, and this is Malcolm after he leaves the nation, when he can freely speak for himself. In order to do this, Malcolm goes on to say, in order to do this, we're starting a voters registration drive. We have to get everybody in Harlem registered, not as a Democrat or Republicans, but registered as independents. We're going to organize a core of brothers and sisters who after this city is mapped out. We're going to organize a core of brothers and sisters who, after this city is mapped out, they won't leave one apartment house door not knocked on. There won't be a door in Harlem that will not have been knocked on to see that whatever black face lives behind that door is registered to vote by a certain time this year. And actually, we can go over to, I have the text of the speech pulled up. We can flip over to that. Well, let me see. Hold on. Let me see what I have here. I think I signed this. Okay. Malcolm S. Ballot of the Bullets. Okay. But we can flip over to the text of the speech. You scroll down. Last two paragraphs. Okay, we have to get everybody in Harlem registered, not as a Democrat or Republicans, but registered as independents. We're going to organize a core of brothers and sisters who, after this city is mapped out, they won't leave one apartment house. Door not knocked on. There won't be a door in Harlem that will not have been knocked on to see that whatever black face lives behind that door is registered to vote by a certain time this year. Nobody will have an excuse not to be registered. We'll ask him to let us see your card. If you don't have the sense of responsibility to get registered, we'll move you out of town. It's going to be the ballot or the bullet. This is March 29th, 1964. Okay, you can read the text of the speech here. This is at VLIB.us. You can just search for Malcolm X Ballot of the Bullet, March 29th, 1964. It'll come up. Okay, you can read the text of the speech. Also on YouTube, they have 5 minutes of the speech from March 29th, 1964. The beginning of the speech, Malcolm used the term African Americans. This is what I'm trying to explain. I don't know where people got this, that Jesse Jackson created the term African American or invented the term African American. He reintroduced the term African American. We've talked about that before. Earliest recorded usage of the term African American dates back to May 15, 1782 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. New York Times has articles dealing with this. I don't know why people keep perpetuating this myth, like Willie Lynch. Willie Lynch never historically existed. People keep talking about the Willie Lynch letter of 1712. Willie Lynch never historically existed, and the letter's been proven to be a fraud. He used the term African Americans, so-called Negroes. He said one of the reasons that is bad for us to continue to just refer to ourselves as so-called Negroes, that's negative. Okay? When we say so-called Negro, that's pointing out what we aren't, but it isn't telling us what we are. We are Africans, and we happen to be in America. Okay? We're not Americans, we're Africans who were formerly kidnapped. Okay? our forefathers weren't the Pilgrims. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. The rock landed on us. Now, he's partly correct. Because, as we talked about here, and you've heard my interviews with Dr. David Imhotep, if you read The First Americans or Africans Documented Evidence, you know the African people are the original Americans. I understand what Malcolm was talking about. He's talking about the government, things like that. African people are the original Americans. We've been in this land at least 51,700 years before Native Americans came into existence. And when you go to the 1828 Noah Webster Dictionary and you look up the term American, it clearly tells you American referred to the Aboriginal or copper-colored races that were here before. This is who Europeans found when they got here, when they got to the Americas. The Aboriginal copper-colored races. Well, those were African people and Native Americans who were here when Europeans got here. So the term American originally did not refer to Europeans. It referred to who they found in the Americas when they got here. Well, who was that? So the original Americans are African people. Europeans are not the original Americans. Let's go to this here. Let me pull this up from YouTube. Facebook may flag me, hopefully not, but here is, let me pull up. I'm going to pull up the Ballot of the Bullet. Because I found it on YouTube. It's about 5 minutes I found on YouTube. I was looking at it today. How's everybody doing watching us on YouTube as well? How you all like this type of information?
African Americans, or so-called Negro. One of the reasons that it is bad for us to continue to just refer to ourselves as so-called Negro, that's negative. When we say so-called Negro, that's pointing out what we aren't, but it isn't telling us what we are. We are African, and we happen to be in America. We're not American. We are people who formerly were Africans who were kidnapped and brought to America. Our forefathers weren't the Pilgrims. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. The rock was landed on us. We were brought here against our will. We were not brought here to be made citizens. We were not brought here to enjoy the constitutional gifts that they speak so beautifully about today. And because we weren't brought here to be made citizens today, now that we've become awakened to some degree and we begin to ask for those things which they say are supposedly for Americans, they look upon us with hostility and unfriendliness. So our unwanted presence, the fact that we are unwanted, is becoming magnified in all of America's preachments today. In the United Nations, you have poor nations and rich nations. They say that the most powerful bloc in the UN are the African Asian bloc. These are the poor nations. Yet they carry more weight in this political body than the nations do who have all the money. Why? Because no matter how wealthy America is, she only has one vote. No matter how wealthy Russia is, she only has one vote. Whereas all the poor nations in Africa who have just emerged into independence, they have each a vote too. And they stick together and are able to outmaneuver the rich nations. This is by having independence and the right to vote in the political world body, it has enabled the dark nations to band together and use the strength of their ballot to force the wealthy nations, which are the white nations, into giving more independence to other nations who are still under their jurisdiction. You and I have to look at this and understand this. that the ballot is as powerful as the bullet. Now, if you and I leave it up to the moderate Negro leaders, they'll be able to trick it up and make the world think that they passed something that doesn't really mean anything. So what you and I have got to do is get involved. You and I have to be right there breathing down their throat. Every time they look over their shoulder, we want them to see us. We want to make them pass the strongest civil rights bill they've ever passed. Because we know even after they pass it, they can't enforce it. In order to do this, we're starting a voters registration drive. We have to get everybody in Harlem registered. Not as Democrats or Republicans, but registered as independents. We're going to organize a corps of brothers and sisters who, after the city is mapped out, they won't leave one apartment house door not knocked on. There won't be a door in Harlem that will not have been knocked on to see that whatever black face lives behind that door is registered to vote by a certain time this year. Nobody will have an excuse not to be registered. We'll ask him, let us see your card. If you don't have the sense of responsibility to get registered, we'll move you out of town. It's going to be the ballot or the bullet. After we get our people registered, we can then organize that voting strength and channel it in the direction that will get immediate results for the benefit of our people. We can sweep our enemies right out of office, but we will not be able to do it sitting around talking about select and elect your own candidates.
All right. So that's an excerpt of the Ballot of the Bullet. There's a partial transcript there that I was showing you. Malcolm was talking about people have to study Malcolm. You can't just study Malcolm in the Nation of Islam. You can't just look at excerpts of speeches. You have to really read Malcolm's speeches. You got to read this book here by James H. Cone, Martin Malcolm in America, A Dream or a Nightmare. And James H. Cone shows how, and James H. Cone is known as the father of black liberation theology. He shows how toward the end of Dr. King's life and Malcolm X's life, their ideologies are converging. You study Malcolm, you study Dr. King, 66, 67, and 68. Okay. And Dr. King was always a revolutionary. Dr. King used to own guns until they arrested and convinced him to get rid of his guns. Dr. King tried to get a concealed pistol license in 1956 in Montgomery, Alabama. All right. People don't read. Okay. This is why you got to read, this nonviolent stuff to get you killed, how guns made the civil rights movement possible, by Professor Charles E. Cobb Jr. Hold on, I just had that book. You got to read Dr. King's books. Dr. King wrote 5 books. I'm listening to what people are saying about Dr. King. I can tell they never read any of his books, probably never read any of his papers, any of the King's papers, anything like that. Where do we go from here? Chaos or community? He wrote this in 1967. This is his last book. Okay. Where do we go from here? Chaos or community? Then this one here from, where's that Malcolm X speech? Hold on. I had books arranged for the class on Saturday. This is, this nonviolent stuff to get you killed, how guns made the civil rights movement possible. This is by Professor Charles E. Cobb Jr., which deals with how civil rights leaders own guns and how it was Negroes with guns protecting civil rights workers and protecting civil rights workers protesting and things like this. OK, if it had not been for Negroes with guns, there would not have been a civil rights movement. They talk about Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth owning guns. They deal with Fannie Lou Hamer, Rosa Parks' husband, Raymond Parks, owned guns. All different types of things like this. Is a whole history dealing with how guns made the civil rights movement possible. it was ostensibly nonviolent on the surface, but it was Negroes with guns that made the civil rights movement possible. It was Negroes with guns that made the civil rights movement possible. Then this one right here, Malcolm X Speaks, edited with prefatory notes by George Brightman. This one right here. This has a lot of speeches from Malcolm. Majority of them are after he leaves the Nation of Islam. Now, the version of the Ballot of the Bullet they have here is from April 3rd, 1964 at Corey Methodist Church in Cleveland, Ohio. But that's good. That's good as well. He uses the term African American in April 3rd, 64 as well. This is before he goes to Mecca also. So you have to study the trajectory of Malcolm's life. Okay, it's the same thing with Dr. King. People try to hold Malcolm in suspended animation like Captain America. Same thing they do with Dr. King. They try to hold Dr. King in suspended animation August 28th, 1963, the March on Washington. And don't even understand the speech that was originally called Normalcy Never Again. Then the speech was called A Canceled Check. And it's later, years later, going to be called I Have a Dream. That's not what the name of the speech was when he delivered it. And the speech is about dismantling white supremacy and dismantling white supremacy and racism and holding America accountable for a promissory note that they gave us 100 years prior in 1863 with the Emancipation Proclamation. Then when we take that promissory note to the bank, the deposit is marked insufficient funds. So we got to do this research. I'll talk about some of this in Atlanta at the Juneteenth Festival. I'm speaking there on Saturday, June 19th and Sunday, June 20th. Juneteenth Festival. Visit Juneteenth, JuneteenthATL.com, JuneteenthATL.com. All right, look, we have to get out of here. You can support the African History Network, $, the AHN Show through Cash App, $, the AHN Show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show. When you do it through Cash App, be sure to type in $, the AHN Show, SHOW. Okay. And be sure to type in $, the AHN Show, SHOW. Be sure to type in all the characters and it'll say Michael and it'll show my picture there. Okay. Because like I said before, somebody set up a fake African History Network Cash App account that's similar to mine. I've already reported them. I'm waiting on Cash App to follow up and shut them down. And then also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show. And be sure to register for the online course that I teach on Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We have that at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay, so we appreciate the support. This will help me get to and